ripples. And as I was paying attention to, as they crossed each other, they started to swirl where they intersected. You know, if you've ever looked at a stream and you see two currents going in almost equal and opposite directions, they create those little whirlpools. So there's these little whirlpools forming, and out of the whirlpool, I started to see the physical world evolve. Electrons, protons, atoms, molecules, rocks, planets, comets, solar systems coming out of this one energy that was interacting with itself. Well, I woke up the next day and I was like, wow, that was a crazy dream. My wife and I got in the car to go to brunch, and we pulled up at a stoplight, and there was a car in front of me with one of those Christian fish stickers on the bumper. You ever seen that? It looks like a fish. Well, what it really is it's two arches that are equal and opposite that are interacting with each other. And I was like, oh my God, that's the mathematical symbol that I saw in my vision, in my dream last night. So I Googled it, and it turns out that it's a very important mathematical symbol. It's known as the ichthys. The ichthys was used by the Baptists. It was called the Christian fish. And so when you met another Baptist, back during certain periods of time, it wasn't safe to be a Baptist, you'd be persecuted. So one Baptist would sit down and draw one of the arches, and the other Baptist would draw the other arch, and it would make a little fish. You would know that you're speaking with a Baptist. But the history of the symbol is that it was known as the womb or creation, or the mother of creation. The fish was on the womb of the fish. And so what it was named was after this first moment of creation. This moment of creation where the physical world came into existence as a byproduct of this one intelligence interacting with itself with equal and opposite energies. Now, we see these equal and opposite energies a lot, male and female, yin and yang. They're both required to create. And so this was the moment of universal creation, when all that was and all that had been, which was simply energy existing in the void, decided to move, began its hero's journey, and started from itself creating the material or physical world. And I thought, wow, this is such an incredible way for something to come to know itself. In other words, if the desire is to know more about yourself, what this energy was doing was now creating from itself the known universe so that it could witness what was contained within it. This is very much a parallel to our own journey. In our own lives, we come to know ourselves through the reality that we create, and we interface with that reality and come to know ourselves at a deeper level. Now, more on that in a moment. But this geometric symbol known as the ichthys was a symbol that fascinated a guy by the name of Euclid, 300 BC, 300 years before Christ. This was the guy who created modern geometry, right? He was the father of geometry. And he took that shape, which is the two intersecting arcs, and he built it out into two intersecting circles. And that was known as the Vesica Piscis. And that was a very important symbol because it started to become the foundation of all of geometry. What Euclid found was that there were these repeating mathematical patterns throughout all of life and all of the universe. Some of these were later explained as the golden mean or the Fibonacci sequence, these sacred ratios that you can find in seashells or scuttlefish or pine cones or flowers, or even in the ratio of human bones. It's sort of an imprint left after this original mathematical moment, this one moment of creation, where all that is and all that was, which was non-physical, created the physical, or gave birth to the physical reality from itself. So it's really interesting if you look at what geometry was. The Latin or Greek root is geometria, and that means the mother of all creation. So it's really important to understand that geometry wasn't just math, it was a study of what was described as the mother of all creation, which another way to describe that is God, right? Because back then, Gaia was the mother of the constellation of planets within the solar system and was essentially the mother of everything in the known universe at that time. It wasn't just Euclid who was fascinated with these symbols. Leonardo da Vinci was fascinated with these symbols because if you take the circles of the Vesica Piscis and you continue to play out that pattern, you get something really interesting, which is the flower of life. And so if you've been involved in the New Age conversation, you probably run into the flower of life. It's this repeating patterns of circles. And you can find these repeating patterns of circles in places of power throughout the world. You can find it within the center tilestone of Herod's palace, which was 100 years before the birth of Christ. You can find it at the imperial palace in China, The Fudons, who guard the secret, supposedly, have their paws on top of a three-dimensional flower of life. You can even see this concept of mathematical crossings or geometric crossings within almost every single religious symbology. So you can take a look at, for example, in Jainism and a lot of Eastern Buddhist religions, they use the swastika, which is two equal and opposite symbols that are interacting with each other. You can take a look, of course, at the yin and the yang, and the Tao, which is two equal and opposite symbols that are interfacing with each other. You could look at the Star of David, which is an upward triangle and a downward triangle, right? Two equal and opposite geometric shapes interfacing with each other. And even if you look at Christianity, the symbol itself is a cross, right? Which is a parallel between the crossing of the outward and the inward expressions of this one original energy that gave birth to the physical world. So this geometric pattern plays out over time, and what it articulates is a mathematical expression of what some people describe as the field of intelligence or the field of consciousness. It's also been described as the luminiferous ether or the unified field. So it's a fabric of energy that exists everywhere that reality effectively sits upon and is projected by. And so this is this underlying field of energy that runs through all of reality. The Hindus describe this as the great shining body of radiance that has no beginning and no end. The Buddhists describe it similarly. Christianity, it's described in some ways as the Holy Spirit, right? Or a spiritual field. So every different spiritual tradition really refers to the same fabric of reality that geometry explains through these mathematical symbols. What's also important to understand is that this original energy that gave birth to the material world is also the energy that feeds our soul. It is soul energy. If you go back and look at the history of the universe, and I think Noah Yuval Harari does a great job of this in his book, Sapiens, what he describes is that about 13.5 billion years ago, we were pre-physics. There was no time, there was no space, there was no matter, and there was no energy, so we didn't have physics. You know, we explain the physical world today through the scientific study of physics, but we fail to often recognize that there was a time where physics didn't exist because there was nothing that existed in the physical world. And what he suggests is then there was a moment, there was a phenomenon, and he describes it as well as the Big Bang, right? So I'm explaining my interpretation of what happened. And as we now had time, matter, energy, and space, given another 3 billion years, all that initial activity cooled down, and what we got was chemistry. So we started to get this individuation of the material components into the periodic table. Things like carbon and oxygen and helium. And given a little bit more time, really 10 billion years, that chemistry evolved into biology. So now you went from having a universe with a bunch of stuff that wasn't alive to life forms, right? That happened fairly recently, about 3 billion years ago. Well, what happened? Well, what happened is that over time, all of the physical stuff that wasn't alive continued to organize and diversify into physical structures. And at some point in time, those physical structures evolved into more complex physical structures. You can think of them as antennae. So within these physical structures, antenna, which is still a non-physical aspect of reality, an antenna developed, but that antenna now allowed consciousness itself, or the original energy, to transmit into the inert or innate object to give it life. So this was really amazing. After 10 billion years, the reality that had formed out of the one life force now evolved to such a point that that life force could transmit back into that reality and become alive. More evolution occurs, and about 170,000 years ago, we get the first version of the human being. And what was unique about human beings was the fact that we use language, we had the capacity to imagine, and the specific type of structure of our brain, right? That's what gave us language and the capacity to imagine. It's what also gave us significant frequency. And so now you had human beings who were an individual expression of this one life force or this consciousness. We describe, for example, God as an infinite intelligence. It's one intelligence infinitely expressing itself through almost 8 billion people on the planet now. You can think of it as one electricity lighting up 8 billion light bulbs, right? We're all different, we're all unique expressions, but it's one originating intelligence. And the human being, according to scripture, was made in the image of God or the original intelligence. And so just as God came to know himself or herself, itself, through that which it created from itself, we come to know ourselves through that which we create in our own reality. And so we can see we've completed now the life cycle of God, right? We are now God-like beings connected to God, an expression of God, creating just as God had through the way that we think in the reality that we create. Hey, it's David. Quick announcement before we get back to your episode. Our annual event, the Powerful Living Experience, is coming up. There's a link in the show notes, or you can visit powerfullivingexperience.com. Check out the video of last year's event. We're going to be bringing together 1,000 impact-driven entrepreneurs, leaders, and game changers to spend 3 days doing what matters most. Going really, really deep on identifying the limiting beliefs and subconscious. Life is a mirror. Your bank account is a mirror. Your business is a mirror. Your relationships are a mirror. All of your reality is a mirror of who you are. And so in this way, we're able to come to know who we are, meaning who we've been up until this point. And when we don't like our reality, we can actually change our reality by changing ourselves. We become different in quality, in character, in emotion, and in thought, and our reality must reflect that. And so we're going to get into this framework because this framework will help you understand that anything is possible, and it will give you specific step-by-step process for how to change your reality by changing who you are. So I want to start with a brief understanding of you. I want you to sort of imagine you on a whiteboard with a little stick figure. It's you, the first piece of this puzzle. And on a moment-by-moment basis, you're thinking. You're always thinking. I've seen different stats, 6,000 thoughts a day, 60,000 thoughts a day. Whether you're intending on it or not, you're always thinking. Can we agree on that? So you're always having thoughts. In fact, one of the biggest challenges when you try to sit down and meditate is that you can't stop thinking, because that's what we do as human beings. We're constantly thinking. We're remembering the past. We're predicting the future. We're observing the present. Every time you have a thought, it's an electrical activation in the neural networks of your brain. And soon after having the thought, if you're aware of the thought, or even if you're not, the electrical activity of that thought resonates through your nervous system and you experience an emotion. So whenever there's a thought, there's an emotion. The thought is the electrical activity in your brain. The emotion is the electrical activity of your nervous system. For the purposes of explaining this, I want to break your thoughts and emotions down into two categories, positive and negative. So positive thoughts are thoughts that feel good. We would describe this as intelligent thoughts, or thoughts that move you into a powerful state of being. Negative thoughts are what we would call unintelligent thoughts, and thoughts that move you into a primal state of being, a state of being that doesn't feel good. If you've heard other episodes, I talk about how there are only two states of being, powerful states and primal states. Powerful states of being are states like joy, curiosity, excitement, calm, peace, states of being that feel good. Those are created by good feeling thoughts or intelligent thoughts. Then there are primal states of being, states like stress, anxiety, overwhelm, boredom, jealousy, anger. Those are states of being that don't feel good. That's when you're in the sympathetic expression of your nervous system, fight or flight. Those feelings, that state of being, are created by unintelligent thoughts, or what we're calling negative thoughts. So in any moment, you're having positive thoughts or negative thoughts. It's moving you into a powerful state or a primal state. And we would describe those as intelligent thoughts or unintelligent thoughts. When you are thinking these thoughts and feeling these emotions, you're broadcasting that frequency out into reality. So all of consciousness, meaning this original energetic entity or organism or framework that is the underlying substrate or substance of the material world, and is also the same material that is soul material. So all of reality receives your broadcast and begins to coordinate in infinitely intelligent ways the organization of your life experiences to reflect back to you what it is that you're broadcasting out. This is the idea of law of attraction. It's mathematical, it's geometric, it's just, meaning it doesn't care about status in society or who you are. It's physics, it's vibration and energy. What you put out there, you get back. And so life begins to organize coincidences, synchronicities, situations, circumstances based on what it is that you're broadcasting. And you wake up on a Monday morning and you receive life exactly as you've ordered it. And there will be parts of your life that you like, parts of your life that you don't like. I would call the parts of your life that you like preference, and the parts of your life that you don't like, contrast, or we might call them problems. And the things that you like about your life reflect back to you a habit of intelligent, positive thinking. And the things that you don't like are byproducts of a habit of unintelligent, negative thinking and feeling. And so, how do we become aware of what it is that we've been thinking and feeling that's created this organization, this delivery of our order from life that we'd like to change? What is it that I was thinking that created this problem? And the answer to that question is notice what you think and how you feel in reaction to the problem. Because what you think and what you feel in reaction to the problem is not actually a reaction to the problem, it is what created the problem in the first place. So when you experience looking at your bank account not having enough money and you worry that you're not going to have enough, that's a thought, that's a belief. That is the belief that actually created the lack of money in your bank account. When you notice how you're feeling and you've been experiencing physical unwellness, an autoimmune condition, or a chronic health problem, and you ask yourself this question, geez, what is wrong with me? That belief that there's something wrong with you and that habit of thought, which is there's something wrong with me, is what created the health condition in the first place. This moment that we experience in our life is what I call the one moment of transformation. It's when we come to know who we were and who we've been based on our reaction to the reality that we've created. Right? I'll repeat that one more time. It's this moment where we become aware of who we've been and who we are in the moment as a result of our reaction to that which we've created. The beautiful thing about this is that when we understand that this is how the game works, that this is the system and how it functions, we can start to take responsibility and a deeper level of awareness and pay attention to our reactions. And we can then know that the reaction is not from this experience, it's what created this experience. And we can realize that this is a habit of belief or a thought, and we can change the belief or the thought. So this is where we start to get into the specific framework that we teach all of our students, all of our clients, all of our event attendees. This is the core of our framework. It is to notice on a moment by moment basis, as you're experiencing your life, are you experiencing it? Are you reacting to it in a powerful state or a primal state? Does your reaction to the experiences of your life feel good or feel bad? Because what's important to understand is that the only thing that is causing you to feel a particular way is not the experience. It's the thinking that you have about the experience.
Your unique vision is what makes your brand special, and Shopify gives you all the tools to do that. When I started Chamberlain Coffee, I had this very specific vision.
I'm gonna say that again. It's not the amount of money in your bank account that's causing you to move into stress, which is a primal state. It's your belief that you won't have enough money to survive, or that you'll never have more money that's moving you into a primal state. It's not the experience, it's your belief about the experience. So, on a moment by moment basis, you notice whether you've moved into a powerful or a primal state. And if you've moved into a primal state and you want to be able to transform your external reality, you have to change yourself. You have to change your thinking. Romans says, be not conformed to this world. Be transformed by what? The renewing of your mind. So now you've got the material that's ready to be renewed. Right? I believe that there's something wrong with me. That's a belief. Now, one of the beautiful things that we've discovered after over 10,000 coaching conversations is that 100% of the time that you're thinking something that doesn't feel good, it turns out it's not true. So your nervous system is an emotional guidance system. It's almost like a lie detector test. And anytime you move into a primal state, which is a byproduct of one thing and one thing only, which is thinking, not the experience, but the meaning that you're giving the experience, 100% of the time that you move into a primal state, whatever that thought is, it's not true. Now, it may seem true to you because you've been thinking the same thought for a long time, and you've been unconsciously seeking evidence to support that thought. Neuroscience tells us that you've been omitting any evidence in your life that is not in alignment with that belief. So there may be money that is abundant around you, but you're not paying attention to it because you believe that money is scarce. There can be lots of evidence that there's nothing wrong with you. You're on this journey, you're learning, you're growing, you're absolutely perfect at every stage of development that you're at. There's nothing wrong with you, but you've been omitting all of that evidence because it's not in alignment with the belief that there's something wrong with you. So 100% of the time that you're moving into a primal state, it is the byproduct of an untrue thought. That's why we say it is a byproduct of unintelligent thinking. Now, that means that we can work a little framework here. We can say, well, wait a minute, if that's not true, that there's something wrong with me because it moves me into a primal state, then some form of the opposite must be true, right? What we're starting to do here is what I would call the work or a decision matrix, right? This is a tool that we teach. It's in my book. It's fundamental to all of our courses, all of our coaching. It's called the decision matrix. It's identifying a limiting belief and saying, well, if that doesn't feel good, then that's not true. And some form of the opposite must be true. Well, what's some form of the opposite if there's something wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. And the third part of this little 3-step process that I promised you is, well, what evidence do I have for the fact that there's nothing wrong with me? Now, when I was struggling with my own health challenges, I'd go, well, I got all kinds of evidence that there's something wrong with me. I can't sleep, I got physical pain, I got heart palpitations, I've got anxiety. I say, no, let me take a step back. This manifestation